What's up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the Wake and J College Football Show. This is going to be your playoff preview. Technically, these are bowl games, but we're going to consider them playoffs. I don't really care which bowl game they are. I already did do a bowl preview, so if you missed that, go ahead and check that out. But strictly playoffs. 4 games. Let's break them down. Um, Honestly, I'm a little nervous about a couple of these games just based on the way these automatic buys worked out. Yes, we know the playoff system is flawed. Yes, it could use some tweaks. We will get into that at some point. It's going to change next year, anyways, to some extent, adding in another 2 teams. But hopefully, and honestly, guys, this is what we should have expected: is there was going to be some blowouts and some bad matchups. It's just the way this is set up to be. Um, Hopefully, it's not the same this week. Hopefully, they're all great games. They all come down to the wire. They're all intense and not double-digit blowouts like last week, but we'll see. But yeah, and then I'll get into my favorite bets as well for each game, as well as a couple honorable mentions, and the whole time we'll be high talking about football, because what could be better than that? So let's get into it. Let's get a little high, and let's talk some playoffs. All right, we'll start with Penn State and Boise State. We'll just go chronological order. The Fiesta Bowl, for those of you who do care which bowl game this is. Penn State is an 11.5 point favorite. And honestly, this is one of the games that I'm a little nervous about when it comes to this round of the playoffs. We all saw it when the playoffs were announced, the seedings. We saw it. Penn State really just had a clear path to the Final Four, is really what it comes down to. They had SMU. Some people, I'm sure, thought SMU had a chance. I really didn't. And if they won that game, which they did, they played Boise. Again, a group of 5 team who made the playoffs. Not really. Let's just put it this way. Every team was hoping that they had the chance to face Boise, because it's, I don't want to say a guaranteed win, but it's an easier win than some others. Penn State just doesn't have to screw up. That's really what it comes down to. Now, I said it last week when they were facing SMU. This game feels like a game where Penn State takes care of business, similar to last week. Like I said, SMU. Games that Penn State are favored in, they should win, all that stuff. They take care of business and they win those games. That's just the way of James Franklin. But when they do face a team that is better than them, or they're expected to lose against, that's exactly what they do. They lose, because that's the way with James Franklin. They're expected to win this game. I expect them to win this game. I know, I get it. Ashton Genty, he's crazy. He's great. Second in the Heisman. Just unbelievable season. His best game of the season, you could argue, was against Oregon, who's the #1 team in the nation. And Boise played Oregon tough in that game, and it was a close game. So there is a chance. There is a chance that Boise could win this game. That defense is so good, guys. Penn State's defense is so good. Now, you could argue that maybe they had a little inside information from Manny Diaz on how to stop SMU. There's that conspiracy that, some people have considered. I'm not necessarily going to buy into that. I think Penn State's defense is good regardless of if they have help from Manny Diaz. Boise is a top team running the ball, obviously with Ashton Genty. Why wouldn't they be? And they really don't ask a lot of their quarterback. Basically don't turn the ball over is really what it comes down to. Maddox Madsen, I believe is his name, or is it Madsen Maddox? I don't. One or the other. Boise likes to run the ball. Now, Penn State, 9th in the nation, stopping the run. 103 yards per game is all they allow. It's going to be tough for Boise because their quarterback may have to be special. It is what it comes down to. If they want a chance of winning this game, he might have to be special. And they haven't needed him to be special all year. We even saw it last week with SMU and Penn State. Penn State offensively didn't have the greatest game. They got off to a very slow start, but that defense is just so good, it didn't matter. And that's probably what's going to happen this week. Penn State's going to win fairly easily. Boise's going to get shut down offensively. They're not going to be able to do much. Like I said, their quarterback's going to have his best game of his whole career, and they haven't needed him to do that. I don't know if he's going to be able to do that. Texas, Arizona State in the Peach Bowl. Texas is a 12.5 point favorite. And I go back and forth on this one because we've seen two different Texas teams. We saw Texas of last week where they just dominated and came out running the ball, which we haven't seen consistently from them all year, especially the way they were running that ball. Shocking, because Texas defense every week, more often than not, shows up and balls out. And it's that offense every single week that you're wondering, what offense am I getting? And that's where I go back and forth on this one. Do I think Texas should and can win this? Yes, I do think they can, should, and will win this. 12.5 is where I struggle with it. It's how much are they going to win by? Is this going to be a close game or is it not? Because it could be close. Arizona State does have a pretty good, run defense. Texas also has a very good run defense. Now, for those who don't know anything about Arizona State, very underrated, very good team. They are the Big 12 champs. They are led by Cam Scadaboo. Kenny Dillingham is their coach. If you have not experienced Kenny Dillingham, then you are in for a treat when you do, because he is fun. I'm an Arizona State fan solely because of him. Sam Leavitt has been great this year. Arizona State has won like 8, 9, 10 straight when he's been the starter. One of their 2 losses was when he wasn't playing. They've had a very good season. Now, Jordan Tyson, leading receiver, who is not only their leading receiver, he's basically their only receiver. Their second leading pass catcher is Scadaboo, the running back, which is not ideal, when it comes to winning some of these big games, but they've made it work so far. They've played one game without Tyson, dominated, so we'll see how it goes. I am excited for this one just because I like Arizona State. I like watching Scadaboo play. Again, if you have not watched him play, you're also in for a treat. He is just a little battering ram, and Texas might get sick of trying to tackle him. We'll see. He has that effect on people. Arizona State does average nearly 200 yards rushing a game, and Texas, like I said last week, we saw him explode on the ground. And it helps significantly in that game. And when Quinn Ewers can rely on the run game and doesn't have to be Mr. Do-It-All, he flourishes. Can Texas just be consistent and keep that up? Because we have not seen them always do that this season. That's where I'm so wishy-washy on this game. I think Texas still wins it. It's just whether or not they sweat it out or not, because they shouldn't sweat it out. Texas is talented enough on defense and offense that they should not have to sweat this game out, and they should win easily. We just haven't seen them always do that. We got the Rose Bowl. Ohio State, Oregon, definitely the game I'm most looking forward to. Ohio State is a 2.5 point favorite. Feels like that might be just a little biased just based on the way they manhandled Tennessee, but we've already seen this matchup, and it was a 1-point win for Oregon. In Oregon, Ohio State was driving late. Looked like they might get into field goal position, and then time just ran out on Will Howard. It was a close one, and everybody thought, all right, we'll see this game matchup again, Big Ten championship game, and it will be fantastic. And then Ohio State lost to Michigan. And then all of a sudden it was Penn State playing Oregon. And all of a sudden Penn State started kind of giving Oregon a run for their money in the Big Ten championship game, running all over this Oregon defense. Now, granted, they couldn't stop Oregon for shit, but Oregon was getting run all over. And we didn't get that matchup that we wanted. And then the playoff seedings come out, and they did Oregon dirty by putting Ohio State in the same. Oregon's the number 1 seed. They shouldn't have to be playing the winner of Tennessee and Ohio State, because if Tennessee had beat Ohio State, then Tennessee is for real, and that's a very tough matchup for Oregon. Or if Ohio State dismantles Tennessee, Ohio State, we already know, is a real contender, and to have them play Oregon for their second round matchup, sure, that's tough for Ohio State, but that's not fair to Oregon. One of the issues I had with the college football playoff, way they had it set up, and with automatic buys and all of that stuff, uh, can't complain too much because it's the way it is, and we got to live with it. But whatever. I think, and I always have thought this, even with Ohio State losing to Michigan, Ohio State is good enough to win this game. My biggest worry has obviously been with their offensive line and the injuries that they've had there at important positions. Offensive line didn't play bad against Tennessee. Tennessee has a good defensive line, and they played good. Oregon also has a very good defensive line. Some would argue potentially better than Tennessee's. So we'll see. And Ohio State has familiarity with their defensive line. They already know what's going to be coming. It'll be interesting. I'm most excited for this game. I think this should be a shootout. Hint, hint for my favorite bets coming up. I think Ohio State wins it because that's the way I've been leaning this whole season, even with the injuries to their offensive line. Oregon's undefeated, and that's great for them. It's so hard to go undefeated, and I feel like a loss is coming for them, whether it's this round or the next. They could make it to the national championship game. I don't see Oregon winning the national championship game just based on parity this year. The fact that they're the only undefeated team, and it's so hard to go undefeated, and just vibes and everything. I'm going Ohio State on this one. Notre Dame and Georgia meeting up in the Sugar Bowl. Kind of surprisingly, Georgia is a 1.5 point favorite, even with Carson Beck gone and Gunnar Stockton taking over the helm. And I mean, I probably would make Georgia the favorite too, in my opinion, just because I do think Kirby Smart's going to have this team ready to play. And I think what we're going to see from Georgia is, what we're used to seeing when we think of Georgia. A team that is focused on the run game first and having a stellar defense. And I think that's what we can expect to see from Georgia in this Notre Dame game. Notre Dame, I don't think, personally, is very good offensively. When they are forced to throw the ball, it hasn't been great. Even if we look back against Indiana, take away that one long run, Notre Dame didn't do much offensively. Couldn't get much going on the ground. Riley Leonard was just throwing the ball. Took him 30-plus attempts just to get to 200 yards. Not great. I'm worried for Notre Dame in this one because I don't think they can do much offensively against this Georgia defense. The key to this game is what's going to happen with Georgia's offense. Can Notre Dame stop Georgia's offense? We'll see. I have to lean Georgia in this one because I just do not trust Notre Dame. I figured they would beat Indiana. I just do not trust them to beat Georgia. I didn't want Notre Dame in the playoffs. They deserve to be there based on what they've done with their schedule, even with that horrible home loss to Northern Illinois, even though they had one of the easiest schedules of these teams that are playing. Don't give me they beat Army and they beat Navy. Those were ranked teams. I don't care. They were service academy teams. Even if they were having great seasons, you still should beat those teams. Those are not the bragging wins that you think they are. Let's just put it that way. I don't have high hopes for Notre Dame in this one. I just think that offense is going to struggle too much against Georgia's defense. So then, based on all of these previews, I have Texas and Ohio State moving on and playing each other, and I have Penn State and Georgia moving on and playing each other, which I think makes them for some very interesting and exciting matchups. I think I would probably give Ohio State the upper hand against Texas, and do I trust James Franklin to win a game against a good team? No, I do not. But I think I tried to say it this year and it backfired on me. But even a broken clock is right twice a day. So give me James Franklin beating that one. And then we got an Ohio State-Penn State rematch. And Ohio State wins the national championship. So that's where I have it going right now. That's how I have the playoffs playing out. Let's get into my favorite bets. Penn State minus 11.5 at minus 106. I just, like I said in the preview, I think this is a game where Penn State just takes care of business because that's what they do in these games. They take care of business. Um, Honorable mention for that game, Penn State, Boise State over 52.5 at minus 115. I think Penn State's going to be able to score a little bit. If Boise can play like they did against Oregon, they will score more than 20 points, which is their team total over under right now. I expect this to be a little bit of a higher scoring one, most of it coming from Penn State. Ohio State, well, actually, we'll move on to Texas. Team total under 31.5 at minus 122. I just worry about, like I was saying in the preview, consistency with this Texas offense. Can they consistently keep it going until they can prove it otherwise? I don't know if they score a lot in this one. I also just don't know how much Arizona State scores. So that being said, an honorable mention for this one is Texas and Arizona State under 51.5 at minus 115. Ohio State and Oregon over 55.5. The first matchup got up to 63, 64, 63. So if that tells you anything, over 55.5 should hit at minus 105. But I also just think Oregon's defense has looked a little suspect, and Oregon's offense is just flying. Not many defenses have stopped them. Ohio State didn't even really stop them that much. So over 55.5 in that one. And then honorable mention, I have Ohio State over team total over 28.5 at minus 102. I don't like the number of 28.5 just because if they do hit 28, I'd be so pissed. But I think they're going to score in the 30s. So that's why I'm willing to take it. And then finally, Georgia Moneyline, minus 118. They are the favorite at minus 118, but it is also still a toss-up. So I'll take it, Georgia Moneyline. But then honorable mention, give me the under in that game of 45.5 at minus 114. The only reason I'm hesitant on the under is just because it is going to be such a lower scoring game, in my opinion. It could also be going to overtime at 10-10. And then we're looking at 4 overtimes later. It's 21-21, 28-28, something like that. Well, I guess they'd be doing 2-point conversions at that point. You know what I mean, though. It adds up, and it would be pushing it, and I would get nervous. I like the under. I'm just a little nervous about it. Now, based on my preview, I do have Georgia winning that game against Notre Dame. So if you give me Penn State, Ohio State, Texas, and Georgia, parlay those together, we're looking at plus 386. If you like Notre Dame instead of Georgia, we're looking at plus 421. But I don't trust Notre Dame, so give me the plus 386. But yeah, that's my playoff preview. Thank you all for joining me. I will come back with a recap of the playoffs, but then also Duke's Mayo Bowl, Minnesota. We'll give you a Minnesota minute previewing their bowl game. It's the last bowl game I'll preview. And we got some more playoffs to preview after that. So thank you all for joining me. I'll talk to you guys in a couple.